Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to decode the hidden psychological meanings behind the questions we actively refuse to answer. Have you ever noticed how someone can be just incredibly talkative, happily detailing exactly what they had for breakfast or giving you a literal play-by-play of their morning commute, but the second you ask one certain specific question, the whole energy in the room completely shifts. Suddenly they get strangely uncomfortable and the lint on their sweater becomes the most fascinating thing in the entire world. Well, today we're going to look at exactly why that happens. We're exploring the 5 specific questions people avoid the most and breaking down the really fascinating psychology behind all that avoidance.
Okay, let's dive right into this by contrasting the simple questions we answer instantly with the ones that make us totally squirm. Think about it. We readily answer the safe questions. They live right there on the surface, requiring absolutely zero emotional heavy lifting. But the topics we dodge, deflect, and run away from, now those are the psychological gold mines. The questions people avoid actually reveal far more about them than the ones they so easily answer. They point directly to our hidden insecurities, our desperate need for emotional protection, and the parts of our identity that we are simply terrified to expose to the world.
You can always spot when someone's psychological defenses have been triggered by looking for these 4 classic evasive maneuvers. They might abruptly change the subject, deploy a nervous laugh to try and just kill the tension, offer incredibly vague answers that go absolutely nowhere, or sometimes just flat out refuse to speak. When someone deploys these behaviors, they aren't just making casual conversation difficult. It's really not about being rude. They are actively protecting parts of their identity they don't fully want exposed. It's a real-time psychological defense mechanism, basically a panic button playing out right in front of you. Let's peel this back, starting right here at the surface. Layer 1, the facade of the present and future. This is all about the friction between the lives we live and what we actually feel. This brings us to the very first question people desperately avoid. What do you actually want in life? Now, this sounds incredibly simple, doesn't it? It's your classic conversation starter. But for a lot of people, being asked this creates an immediate, agonizing discomfort. You'll literally see that deer in the headlights look, and they'll give you a vague, non-committal answer like, oh, just kind of going with the flow, or taking it one day at a time. And they do this not because they're trying to be deeply mysterious, but because answering honestly is genuinely terrifying. Answering this question honestly forces what psychologists actually call self-confrontation. It's like being forced to look into a painfully clear mirror in a brightly lit room. It requires you to honestly examine your own desires, beliefs, and behaviors. For some, they dodge the question because they genuinely do not know what they want. They're deeply uncertain about their own identity. And if you don't actually know who you are, well, that mirror is the absolute last place you want to look. That uncertainty creates this immediate, powerful avoidance. So, the crucial point here is the massive psychological tension that happens when a person realizes their real desires conflict entirely with their current reality. Imagine realizing your deepest desires, the things you truly secretly want, are miles away from the life you're currently living. Acknowledging that gap out loud, that is incredibly heavy. It is so much safer to stay anchored in a vague, comfortable answer than to admit you're actually longing for the stars, because admitting that means you might have to actually change your life. All right, moving on to the second question, we see a really similar dynamic. Are you truly happy right now? Think about how often you get asked this, and how automatically most of us will just blurt out, yes, before our brain even processes the question. We say yes with a big smile, but we don't say yes because it's necessarily the truth. We say yes because of the sheer terror of what a no would require us to do. As our source material highlights perfectly, admitting unhappiness feels intensely emotionally exposing. This question quietly strips away our carefully constructed social masks. Psychology shows that people naturally want to protect themselves by avoiding emotional vulnerability. Even with our absolute closest friends, we naturally want to avoid that raw exposure. Saying I'm fine is the ultimate psychological shield. We'd much rather give a surface-level response and move on quickly than risk the deep, messy vulnerability of true emotional honesty. Let's dive a little deeper now. Layer 2, the scars of the past and the subconscious. Question 3. Why did your last relationship end? Ask this, and suddenly everyone becomes a master of revisionist history. This question is a massive, direct threat to our self-image. Why? Because a truly honest answer demands a brutal level of painful accountability. It requires stepping out of the role of the innocent victim or the flawless hero, which is something most people are simply not ready to offer up over a casual cup of coffee. People simplify the details and shift the blame entirely to outrun 4 massive psychological threats: guilt, rejection, emotional failure, and unresolved pain.
An honest answer might require admitting that actually you were the bad guy, that your insecurity ruined things, or that you were utterly painfully rejected. Admitting you were the villain of your own story, that's a huge anvil to drop on your own ego, so the mind just goes into absolute overdrive to construct a safer, highly edited narrative.
Here's a really fascinating psychological reframe for you. Shifting the blame isn't always born out of malicious manipulation. Very often, it's just emotional self-protection. It's a deeply ingrained instinct. Psychologically, people naturally protect the version of themselves they want others to see. We all desperately want to be the hero of our own story, right? And our brains will work overtime to safeguard that crown, even if it means bending the truth just a little to keep our self-image totally intact. Question 4. What are you most afraid of? Now, this one drags our darkest subconscious fears right into the light. Some people avoid this because they rarely even allow themselves to consciously think about their deepest fears, let alone speak them out loud to someone else. It triggers an immediate fear of judgment. Exposing your deepest fear is the ultimate form of vulnerability. It's essentially handing someone the exact blueprint on how to hurt you. Because this vulnerability makes us so intensely uncomfortable, our mind has to find a place to put it. To avoid that discomfort, the mind automatically buries the fear beneath a thick layer of distraction. If you ask someone what they're afraid of and they instantly crack a joke or suddenly remember a super urgent email they just have to send right that very second, that is their mind automatically hiding the pain under the mask of a clown or the shield of chronic busyness. Avoidance becomes a perfectly honed automatic reflex. And finally, we hit the deepest level. Layer 3, the core. The absolute stripping away of public identity to reveal the naked self. Question 5. Who are you when nobody is around? This is arguably the most profound question on our list, and it feels incredibly psychologically intense precisely because it strips the audience away completely. Think about it. Take away your job title, your social status, your carefully curated social media, your role in the family. What is actually left underneath all of that? When the performance completely stops, who's actually sitting there in the empty theater? We all wear a uniform in public, don't we? We have social roles and expectations to live up to, and we learn how to play those parts exceptionally well. But being asked to define your private identity forces the mind to confront a deeply exposing reality without any of your medals or masks to hide behind. The stark contrast between who we are when the world is watching and who we are when the door is locked, man, that can be a terrifying gap to acknowledge. And here is the profound truth at the absolute center of all of this. The ultimate reason people furiously avoid this final question is the terrifying, mind-bending possibility that they might not actually know the answer. The thought of looking inward, past the job, past the friends, past the daily routines, and finding a blank space in the mirror, that is deeply unsettling. It's just so much easier to stay busy, keep the noise loud, and avoid the question entirely. So, to close out this explainer, let's turn the mirror back onto you. Look inward and ask yourself honestly, which of these 5 questions do you spend the most energy running away from? Is it what you want in life, your true happiness, your past relationships, your deepest fears, or who you really are in private? Pay attention to where you feel the most resistance right now, because right there, right in that discomfort, is exactly where your real growth begins. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.